Psychologists of Reddit, what is something you want to, but never would say to a patient? I once had a guy come in because he was cheating on his wife but didn't want to leave because of their kids. The guy was adamant that he wanted to have therapy either with his mistress or his wife and couldn't decide with which one he was going to stay. He decided to bring in the wife and I had to sit there listening to him deny the cheating and project his guilt into his wife, telling her that she was the one cheating. Obviously I couldn't tell the wife the truth, but if I could I would have told her. He's cheating on you. You're not insane. Get the fuck out. Edit. I told him several times to not bring neither his wife or mistress. He did it anyway and I had to do the session because he had already paid on the policy of the place I worked at was that if a patient had paid we couldn't refuse treatment. After that session I referred him to one of my partners. He was able to work through some of the issues as a couple and individually with the guy. He did choose the wife in the end. I would feel so disgusting if someone trapped me into enabling their cheating on their spouse like that. I hope your tongue is still intact after biting it so hard. My policy is that I never hold secrets. I tell them if they tell me a secret, they know this policy, and they really want to discuss it. I set the stage for the discussion. I just don't throw it out there. But yes, we do go there. My confidentiality duty is to the couple, not the person. I make that crystal clear. You're a grown man. Stop making your problems your mother's problems. She's got good intentions, but she's enabling all your worst behaviors and addictions. And you know that you're taking advantage of that. To the mom, there's no medal for loving your son the most. You are an enabler. You acknowledge this, which is a good first step. But if it does not change your behavior towards him, it's meaningless. Stop making excuses for him. Stop letting him take advantage of you. Because if you don't, the rest of your family has stated that they are going to limit contact with you. You're risking relationships with every other person in your life for an exploitative, codependent one with your son. Your kid is shitty because you are shitty. As a residential child and youth worker, I wish I could say this to 90% of my clients. During couple sessions, he is a toxic ass and you need a GTFO of this relationship. I don't do couples anymore. I found it exceedingly difficult for me to not take a side. Edit. During the first session, the couples worked with me to establish a treatment plan, which included specific goals. These typically included things like balancing home responsibilities, improved communication skills, seeking sexual compatibility, etc. I do not recall a time where they included in their treatment plan anything along the lines of figuring out if we should stay together. As such, it was outside of my professional scope to advise them to separate. While I still practice, I'll never again work with couples. I had this experience as a patient recently. Went to couples counseling for 6 sessions, then got kicked out. Didn't even know that was an option. I kept going to the counselor individually, and on our second session she told me all the problems stem from my partner, that she's emotionally abusive and I should get a divorce. 2 months later I'm living in my brother's basement and couldn't be happier. Me too. He never told me directly to divorce her, but his message was super clear. She was a mess and would never be in a healthy relationship with anyone. As a child family therapist, you're the parent. This is not your kid having a mental illness. This is a kid trying to cope with really bad circumstances that you, as a parent, should have addressed years ago. That job gave me a lot more empathy with kids. Hadn't planned on working with them going through grad school, and a lot less with parents. My parents' way of dealing with me having problems was a combination of telling me to suck it up, blaming whatever was happening on something I had done or was doing, and telling me that I was blowing things out of proportion. I've had my dad tell me that I didn't get sexually abused as a child because they wouldn't let something like that happen when I was having neurological problems. It was because I was playing video games. At 24, my precancerous polyps in my intestines were because I didn't eat right. People live in their own little worlds where bad things only happen to other people. And if something bad does happen, they're very quick to assign the blame to someone else so that it can't be pinned on them this year. Thank you for talking to me. Having to care about you makes me forget my own shit for a moment. This is something you wish you could say to a patient? I hope my therapist thinks, thank you for talking to me. I always worry she wishes I'd shut the fuck up. Few years ago I went through a divorce, and even though things went rather peacefully, it's still a lot to process. For that period of time, it was really nice to be able to focus on someone else and forget about my troubles for a moment. You obviously don't open up about your personal life with your clients. I wish I could have been able to tell them that I was happy to see them, that they brought me peace and stability. I once saw this client, who was a vain, young guy, full of anger and hate, who wanted to crush the people who wronged him. He had a curious backstory of being tragically physically underdeveloped and bullied until he underwent some special medical procedures in high school and grew into a taller, physically fit and handsome guy. I told him, "You ever read comic books? Because you remind me a lot of a supervillain." Of course. I went on to explain what I meant by that and to ensure he was benefiting from looking at his behavior and emotion regulation from a new perspective. I was rather proud of that one. And my supervisor at the time acknowledged that he didn't think he could say something like that. What I didn't tell him, but could have, was that I really didn't care how much puss he crushed that morning before coming to see me, and that we would both probably be better off if he kept that shit to himself. As far as psychotherapy goes, I'm more on the blunt side of things. There's really not much I wouldn't tell the person. You just have to find the right way to make it helpful to their treatment goals and delivered in a way they can digest and understand. Hence the therapeutic part. So he was Captain America, but an asshole? That's pretty much how I saw him. Yeah, I thought phrasing it that way would help him quickly acknowledge the contrast between characterizations of heroes and villains, despite often having similar origins. Thought maybe trying to pursue the hero values and qualities would be a more concrete way to work with him on moving toward his goals. He wasn't the brightest guy, though. To a lot of parents of my patients, you are the problem, not your kids. Stop trying to live their lives for themes. You're into the religious one. Every teenager wonders about sex, you backwards dumb fuck. No one has corrupted themes here. Sometimes, when I see children raised by parents that are so fucking ignorant that they think that they know what is best for their children but don't know that they weren't raised well and didn't realize it, so they don't know better, I feel bad for them. You're such a waste of clean minds. And if those children are not smart enough, they will do the same thing to their children, creating an infinite loophole. Stop it, Bob Newhart. Love this skit. And I was initially surprised how often this thought pops into my head, especially with some of the more elaborate ways clients can make themselves miserable. The most common: today I'm in no mood of your evasions and resistances to what we're trying to work with, so stop talking about your damn cats. I care for you, but we're not friends. I'm trying to be as objective as I can, so back off. I don't see the similarities between you and the fictional character you admire. I'm sorry. No one is forced to love you for what you are. We're just exhorted to respect you and recognize your dignity as a human being. So stop bugging that woman for not loving you for your fatness, your intellect, and your medieval hygiene habits. So settle for the type of woman that likes your type, or change and be the type of man that attracts the type of woman that you have idealized. The insecurities of this man were so huge it was dangerous to say even the first part of this sentence without risking myself of having his mental breakdown in front of me. I'm a clinical psychologist but since 2014 gave up on giving therapy and entered to the human resources stuff. You need to break up with him for the sake of your sanity. I have a very strong ethic in regards to telling the patient what to do. I'll do it when their life is at stake, but they have the right to make horrible decisions and I'm not taking advantage of their vulnerable state to stop them this year. Anything that makes a person feel weaker than they are is something you should never say to a patient, no matter how bad you might want to. As people, we are our own biggest obstacles. As a healer, the goal is to help and do good, never to do harm in any way such like this. It goes against my code. I've had a couple of thoughts I've hid in my treasure trove of thou shall not say to patients if you don't want to get sued type of list. Good God girl, get a grip. So how does YOLO feel now that you're talking to a therapist? Tramp stamp or not, it's still a fucking tattoo. I charge by the hour, not by the day. We don't accept Groupon. Stop flirting. I'm not that escort you hired in Chelsea. I charge by the hour, not the day. Please elaborate. I had a patient going through midlife crisis who always exceeded his schedule. I tried being polite once and told him that's all the time we have for today, but apparently he was unmindful of the two other patients waiting outside the office. And those two patients had more severe issues than him. This year one was in therapy for sexual abuse and the other was suicidal. I had to place him in my afternoon schedule, which he was not happy because it clashed with his tennis practice. I'd have to admit though, he's just really lonely. I'm sensing he comes into my office to just talk. No, it wasn't your Reiki sessions that helped you here. It was coming here once a week, for months. But yeah, let me just smile and say how good is that Reiki for you. Been in the mental health industry for over 5 years now. Not a licensed psychologist but a counselor. Well, you're a sociopath. You know you're a sociopath, right? Quote, me, wishing I could say this too. At this point maybe 5 or 6 clients I've had. Edit. These were adolescents with sex offender backgrounds in a secured residential inpatient facility. They had no real choice but to be in treatment. What do you say to these people to help them improve? They're some of the most challenging people to work with. And in my context they were in a locked residential treatment facility. They were adolescents who have committed sex crimes. Recidivism, reoffense, is above average with these populations, especially those with conduct disorder, which often leads to antisocial personality disorder at 18. Since ASPD cannot be diagnosed until adulthood and usually requires evidence of conduct disorder as a child or adolescent, for kids who are sociopathic, in my experience the best way to discourage them to reoffend was purely behavioral modification and teaching them action and consequence for their behaviors. In my limited experience, most of them never really seemed to care. Only one kind of seemed to get it, and I really hope he's doing better. He seemed like a kid who really wanted to be better, and dare I say even good at heart, but had like virtually zero impulse control. There was another kid in particular who truly scared me, and I'm terrified to consider him even being in public. Otherwise, I've also had more indirect experience with a few adults with narcissistic personality disorder. I don't really jive well with them, but thankfully none of my interactions with them were face-to-face. I was an ancillary service to them. They're just more annoying than anything because instead of taking responsibility for their own actions, nothing is ever their fault and everyone is out to fuck their life over. Like, no, dude, you were in prison for being an accessory to a felony and you don't have housing and a job and you have no cognitive ability to even be remotely accountable for anything, and that is why DCS took your kid away and put them in foster care. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing for some more awesome questions.